Hi, my name is Elaine Holden, and I am your host for Education Matters. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in here to Channel 96. I appreciate you joining me today. You know, I spend about half an hour here with my listening and viewing audience, and you're probably wondering what I do to find out my topics for every week. And usually I spend time testing children, talking to children, working with them, and finding areas that I think we should, as citizens, parents, and grandparents, focus on with our children's education in mind. So today I wanted to talk about micronations. If you haven't heard that term, let me explain what it is. A micronation is a very small country. It can be as small as your backyard. It can be as large as an expanse of desert that an individual owns. Other countries do not necessarily recognize micronations. Now, you will see small nations around the world. Monaco is a little nation. It's about the size of Washington, D.C. Liechtenstein is a little country. Vatican City, believe it or not, is a country within the city of Rome, which of course is in Italy. But all of these countries have something in common. They have a government, they have money, their own monetary system, they have stamps, they issue passports. They are essentially, no matter how tiny they are, a country governed by one type of government or another. So, why am I interested in this? I've seen this as a wonderful vehicle to teach children about government, culture, and give them the opportunity to become familiar enough so that when they are in school and they are engaged in anything to do with culture, with government, with the development of rules and laws, they have a very strong background. They also have a lot more ownership of this particular topic. So how did I get involved in micronations? Well, let me tell you my journey. I read a book years ago called Sealand, and it was about a gentleman in the 1960s who saw that there was a large military platform off the coast of England that was designed and built for spotting German airplanes in World War II. After the end of the Second World War, England abandoned it. They didn't need it anymore. And he took over this abandoned platform. It's quite large, as a matter of fact. He took over this abandoned platform and declared it his own nation. He called it Sealand. Why did he do that? Well, in those days, England did not have private radio stations. It was only the ones that were controlled by the government. He wasn't too happy about that. He wanted to have his own radio station. Those were called pirate stations in those days. And if you sold a lot of advertising and you played music that people wanted to hear that wasn't something that the BBC came up with, some type of symphony, but actually modern music and music that was interesting to other people besides a small group, select group, you'd get a lot of listeners. And that's what he did. He wound up having this amazing pirate station, radio station, and he sold a lot of advertising and made a lot of money. Well, of course, it was insulting to the British, and the British claimed that he had encroached on their territory and he had no business there, and they sent a warship, and he went to court, and lo and behold, the British court said to the Admiralty, sorry, you can't do this. You can't invade that country because it's outside the legal limits of the British Isles. So he kept his country. He kept Sealand. He had a gambling spot there. He did all kinds of stuff with it. Bottom line was, that's kind of the beginnings of the modern micronation. Now, other people have started their own countries, and I was really intrigued about this. So I started to investigate micronations, and I came across the greatest micronation ever. the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis. Flandrensis is consisting of 5 islands off the coast of Antarctica. We and I'm an American citizen, don't get me wrong, but my second citizenship is as in the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis. And we, as the citizens of the Grand Duchy, have all pledged to never go there. We don't want people there. It is a very fragile ecosystem. We want it for the animals that live there, the penguins and the sea lions. And we want it to be kept and preserved for perpetuity. So how do you do that? Well, you lay claim to it. You hope nobody invades it, because we certainly don't have an Army, Navy, or Marine Corps. And we write letters. We try to bring it to the attention of different governments around the world. Now, I will tell you that no government around the world recognizes the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis, and actually we don't care if they do or not. But we also have other micronations around the world that recognize us, and we recognize them, and they each have a purpose. Now, our purpose is very clear. We want to maintain Antarctica for science. We want to maintain the purity of Antarctica, and we want to bring to the attention of the world the fact that the glaciers are melting. And this is a serious concern. This is impacting all of the coastlines of every country in the world. And so, yeah, we write letters. We have to have cleanups, organized cleanups twice a year. I do a roadside cleanup in my neighborhood. I gather all the kids together and the parents, and we find a walking trail and we pick up litter probably pretty much all Saturday morning. We find a nice, comfortable Saturday, usually in the fall and one in the spring. We pick up bags and bags of litter, and then at around noon or 12:30, when we're done, we go to the local pizza barn and we all have pizza. I treat everybody to pizza. And then at the end of our pizza fest, we drive to Ava Marie Chocolates and everybody has ice cream. I should qualify this. All the kids have ice cream. The parents are pretty much comatose by this time. But in any case, they get their sugar high and then they go home. Everybody has a good time. And what does it teach the kids? It teaches the kids not to litter. It teaches the kids responsibility, social responsibility. It teaches them that working in a group, you can get a lot of good things done. It teaches teamwork. There's a lot of really good things about this. And we try to do that twice a year. Now, as I said, there's probably 900, a little over 900 citizens in the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis. And if all of us do cleanups twice a year, that does make an impact. And we try to get that conveyed to the children as well. So that's some of the things that I do as a citizen of the Grand Duchy. I write letters. I write letters to businesses. I write letters to governments. Pretty much anybody that has any authority anywhere. And hopefully they get my letters. I use very nice stationery, and I make sure that I use very nice paragraphs, and I write my letters as well as possible. And I really feel that this makes a big difference for the countries, for the world, for the glaciers in Antarctica. I really feel as if I'm making a difference. And so to be a citizen in a micronation, such as the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis, I think is an important thing. So what does that have to do with education? What does that have to do with children? Well, as I said, I have noticed that children seem separated from government. They don't seem to understand what the government does, what's the purpose of the government, how it functions, how a country becomes a country. And that's the important piece that I think we need to focus on with our education for our kids. Now, I will say that many parents who are homeschooling already do this. They focus on building a micronation, creating a micronation. And they start with the history of, say, America or the history of France, where there is a declaration of independence from another country. And that Declaration of Independence is studied, and then the children write their own Declaration of Independence. Once they have written a Declaration of Independence and declared their independence, they have to name their country. Their country has to have a theme, you know, like the French, liberty, equality, fraternity. Every country has a theme. Every country has sort of a little phrase that represents their country. And so the kids have to find a little phrase that represents their country. They have to find a word or words. Then what else do they need? Well, they need a symbol. We have, of course, that beautiful eagle, and we have the eagle holding an olive branch in one claw and holding the arrows in another claw. And yes, we want peace, but if we have to go to war, we will. So that's our symbol. Every country has a symbol. We need to have the children select a symbol for their country that represents what their country is all about. And then from there, they start to build their own culture. And that's the cool thing. That's where they look at the culture of the country they are in. They look at the culture of other countries. They do a comparison. And then they start building their own culture. What do I want my country to look like? That's a really good thing. Of course, we have our national anthem. Every country has a song that represents the country. And this is where you start blending in other areas of study. So they have to have the selection of a song. They can write their own song. They can take the music from one song and put their own words to it. Depending upon their age, they can also, of course, compose their own song. However they choose to do it, music should be involved. And talk about music, well, we also have to talk about art, right? And we want to have our own flag. We want to have perhaps our own coat of arms. Now right here I happen to have the flag of the Grand Duchy. And as you can see, it's 3 colors, right? And it looks very, very similar to a European flag, no question in my mind. But this particular flag has the 3 colors, and it's got that lovely yellow center with those lions, and that's a very cool thing. And so, yeah, we have a flag for the Grand Duchy. People have flags for their country, and children can draw and work very hard at making their own flag. And then they can have their own coat of arms. You can even have special stamps. Another art project where they can take tiles or some kind of fairly soft material, carve around to make a stamp that will represent their country. Now, I happen to be wearing a medal. It's the Order of the Melting Mountain. Obviously, we spend a lot of time talking about the loss of our glaciers in Antarctica, and to lose a glacier is a pretty serious thing. So when you receive the Order of the Melting Mountain, what you're doing when you wear this, hopefully, is to strike up conversations with people saying, what is that medal? You talk about it. Talk about the importance of keeping as much of our mountains, our beautiful glaciers as possible, and keeping that pristine condition of Antarctica, that 7th continent. And so all of these things make an important impact on the world, and teaching this to our children is really an important thing as well. So where do we go from there? Well, we've done culture, we've done music, we've done art, we have done the Declaration of Independence, and of course what comes after that? Well, the Constitution. If children really read the Constitution or have the Constitution read to them and they analyze it, they then can start making their own constitution that represents their values and what they want their country to stand for. And that's wonderful, because that constitution should incorporate the structure of the government. When I talk to kids, even in high school, I'll ask them, what are the 3 branches of government? And they kind of give me a blank look many times. And I really am not happy with that blank look, because we have the judicial branch, we have the legislative branch, we have the executive branch. These are the 3 branches of the government. They should know that. They should also know what each branch does and the importance of each branch, the balance of power, the understanding of how one interacts with the other to make sure that we have as good a democracy as possible. Perhaps the children don't want to have a democracy in their nation. That's okay too. They can have whatever they want as long as it follows in line with their constitution, and they can justify it by having the various people associated with the government do their jobs, which means, yeah, they have to write job descriptions. Not a bad idea, actually, when you think about it, because when they go out for their first job, they're going to have to understand what the job description is, and they're going to have to be able to say, yes, I can do it, or no, I cannot, or maybe I need more training, and this is where I need the training. And of course, do we vote? Do we have a constitutional monarchy? Do we have an absolute monarchy? Do we have a president? Do we have a prime minister? There's all different kinds of governments. And that's the cool thing, because when they are making that selection as to the type of government they want, they have to study all of the different kinds that are out there in the world. Because they're making that decision for themselves, for their country, they have more investment. And that means that they're really paying attention. So when they go back to school and they study government and civics and history and all of those other important topics, they can turn around and say, hey, I know about that. I've already built my own country. I made my micronation. And so now we have children who understand a Declaration of Independence, who understand a constitution, who understand the various branches of the government, who have music that represents their culture, who have beautiful artwork and a flag and maybe a little stamp, and they can go forth and say, all right, do I issue money? Now this is another thing. Children need to know about money. They need to know where money comes from. They need to know how it's made. Yeah, you know, we bring a paycheck home, but they also need to know how the government makes money, you know, the printing of the money, the design of the money. And they can design their own money, and they can choose their own denominations. If they want a bill that's $1.98, they can have a bill that's $1.98 or $2.53, however they want it. It's their money in their nation. They have a lot of control over this. Kids like that. And so one of the great things for me is that I always direct parents and teachers to the United States Mint. The United States Mint actually produces the most amazing lesson plans for teachers and for parents. There are games, history, coloring pages for littler kids, and really some great literature for older students. So it really covers the span from probably about first grade all the way through 12th. And there's a lot of information for parents as well. So the United States Mint sends out lesson plans once a month. How do you get it? You sign up for free. It's your tax-paying dollars and mine. And so you just go onto the website to the United States Mint, find lesson plans, sign up for it. Should arrive in your mailbox. And they're pretty amazing. So they can watch those videos, play those games, and understand the monetary system. How cool is that? Now, while you're on that website, by the way, it might send you to a few other places. The Smithsonian, National Geographic, those are all free websites. And those are all websites that can give you background information in culture and in countries and the history of countries. And all of that is really good and fun for the kids. So it's not just dry reading of books or having somebody read books to them. It is research, it is game oriented, it has a lot of great stuff. And the Federal Reserve, by the way, also has some nice information on money. If you want to know how the Federal Reserve works, if you as an adult, I know I as an adult sat and watched the videos. I thought they were fascinating. And some of the Federal Reserves actually send out lesson plan packets to parents and school districts for free so that we can all understand what the Federal Reserve is. So you have money. What else do you need? Well, stamps. Now, obviously, you're not going to spend the money anywhere except in your micronation. You're also not going to be sending letters anywhere except in the micronation to other members of the micronation that you happen to belong to, that you've started. So you make your own stamps. But you know how sometimes it's hard to get kids to write letters, write cards, or those thank you notes to Grandma for Christmas? If they are writing on their own stationery with their own little seal at the top or their own little coat of arms, and they're writing a letter to somebody in their nation, it could be a pen pal situation, by the way. You know, there's people in the Grand Duchy of Florensis all over the world, and we certainly correspond with each other, usually email, but you can certainly send the so-called snail mail as well. But children want to design their own stamps for the envelopes, for the letters they write to other citizens of their micronation, which could be kids down the street, it could be relatives, it could be anybody. But the important thing is that they now understand why we need stamps and what stamps do for us, okay? And it's another piece of artwork that you can have them engage in. So when you think about all these opportunities, now you have to say, okay, so what does that tell us about the culture? Well, as you go along, as you start producing more of what you want your nation to be, you start developing an understanding of the music, of the art, of what it takes to make a country. And as I said, you start looking at the cultures of all the other countries, and you decide where you want your country to go culture-wise. And all of this is so wonderful for teaching for children. And that's why I cannot emphasize enough the importance of children learning about government, about what it takes to build a government, to make a government, to have a government work. Now, I do happen to have one book here, and you know I love my books. And I have one, it's called Micronations, and it's by Catherine Ciceri. And I actually reviewed this book in my newspaper column that I write every other week. And, you know, it says, you know, invent your own country and culture. Remember, you're not going to have the United Nations recognize this micronation. It's not like, you know, you're going to be trading diplomats. But you are building a country. And everybody has the right to select a portion of their house, their backyard, their front yard, anywhere that they own a spot and say this is a separate nation. It's not going to be recognized by anybody else, but well, actually, you know, I have to qualify that because one micronation made very beautiful passports, and believe it or not, they actually were recognized going across borders. So some border countries or some countries with fairly loose borders actually recognize these passports, which surprised the heck out of the people that were holding the passport, but they figured, what the heck, and they got their passport stamped. So it's kind of a cool thing. So usually, though, you know, we encourage the children, yes, we want you to build you know, a micronation, and we want you to have a passport. Don't make it look too authentic just so that you don't get in trouble. But that's the kind of thing that now the kids understand what a passport is and why you need it and why some places need a visa and some don't. Do you want a visa into your micronation or not? So all of these pieces now turn into a study of how not just a country works, but how a country works with another country or with multiple countries. And then you can start talking about the United Nations. Now, I will tell you that there is probably 2 or 3 chances for micronations to get together and to talk amongst themselves. So there are, I would say, conventions more than anything else, where all the micronations of the world, or as many as you can imagine, get together once a year, once every other year, and have talks, have conventions, recognize each other, discuss things, and discuss the purpose for which they are formed. Children's purpose, of course, would be to learn about government, to learn how governments are run, structured, what's a successful government, what isn't a successful government. For adults, people like me, who happens to be a citizen of the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis, I have a purpose. I'm concerned about the quality of control that is exerted over that seventh continent, over Antarctica. I'm concerned about the melting glaciers. I'm concerned about the 5 islands that we claim as our own. And I'm concerned about the encroachment of other countries. And so, yes, I write letters. I sometimes get involved in a little bit of protest. I do cleanups in my community because it's important. We don't like littering. And I do all this, and I try to teach the children in the neighborhood at the same time. And I will say that it's kind of a fun thing to do. It's fun enough so that I'm convinced this is one of the best ways to teach children about government, teach children about how governments are formed, how they're structured, how they're run, and that gets them more involved at a personal level. And this personal involvement carries through. It carries through as they learn in school, and then hopefully it carries through as they grow up and they understand the importance of voting. They understand the importance of reading about all of the issues. They understand the importance of examining the votes of the candidates they voted for, or maybe the candidates they didn't vote for, certainly the candidates that won, to see if they are in fact following up on their pledges that they made when they were campaigning. All of this has importance. And so that's really my message today. I hope you have taken it to heart, because I cannot say enough about how much fun it is to have a micronation, how much enjoyment that I know many parents that are homeschooling have gotten from this. I know kids love it. I hear that all the time when I talk to children and to their parents about how that micronation is going. And I have to say that 5th grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade are probably the 3 big grades for teachers who have really spent a whole year building a micronation with their class. And there's a lot of voting, there's a lot of campaigning for how those governments should be constructed, what should be written in the Constitution. They really get involved in it, and that's what we want. We want our children involved, we want them engaged, we want them as excited as possible. So, of course, I'm excited about being, oh, by the way, my full title is Lady Elaine, Baroness of Kellick. I was awarded that title because of my involvement with my micronation, and you can certainly have titles as well. But I really want children to be able to share this and enjoy it, have fun, and learn as much as possible about their government and how their government runs and how they can be a part of it. Not right now when they're little, but when they're adults. So thank you for joining me today. I have enjoyed being with you. I will be with you again next week with more information. This is Elaine Holden for Education Matters.